Some of my favorite conversations have happened over the rims of mugs. I'm Denise Harper, co-host of The Bridge Morning Show with Denise and Chris, and program director for The Bridge. There's something special about sitting across the table from a friend, whether we've known them forever or for just a minute, with a good cup of coffee and an open heart. I hope today's conversation will inspire and encourage you. Welcome to another episode of Over the Rims of Mugs. I'm your host, Denise Harper. Today, we have an extra special guest named Cadie Fagg, and you are from the Delaware area.
Yes.
Welcome today, Cadie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I can't wait to hear your story. I kind of got connected to you through a mutual friend and somebody that you're working with, Frank Parks,
Yes.
who is the director for Fishers of Men
Yes.
Foundation, which is an amazing ministry that I'm just now learning more about.
It is.
So, Cadie, before we jump into that, I want to hear a little bit of your story.
Sure.
You grew up around here.
I did. So I grew up in Lewis, Rehoboth area, graduated from Cape in 2014. So, and I went back and forth between my mom and dad. They were separated when I was young. So I was actually raised Wiccan. My mom openly practiced witchcraft.
Wow.
So growing up, I had no idea about Jesus' faith. I just kind of was following my parents' lead in that. I had a good childhood, though. You know, my dad was great. He primarily raised us. My mom, not knowing at the time as a child, was in active addiction. So there was a separation there. And then growing up, I had one full brother and 3 stepbrothers. And they were actually all, at one time, addicted to heroin. So I was the youngest of 4 brothers, which is really where my story starts, that I had 4 older brothers, and they were tough. It was always an event. Every holiday, there was always somebody getting into something. So they started that. I was probably about, 10, 12, when that really kind of kicked off. And growing up in a household where, my parents were grappling with them nonstop to try to save them from addiction, I kind of slipped through the radar a little bit. And
A lot of attention on them and not as much on you.
yeah, which to me, I was like, yeah. So I went out on my own of drinking and partying, and kind of started that lifestyle and landed me in Baylor's Correctional at 19, drinking and doing drugs. I never became addicted, though. God bless. But, I brought that chaos and that environment with me through my adolescence and my early 20s, relationship after relationship. And I, constantly had a toxic relationship with boyfriends, very abusive, and they were mostly all addicts. And I never once thought to stop and be like, Cadie, you are just repeating this cycle and brought that chaos from home into your adult life. The drinking and the drugs led me to a lot of kind of gang affiliated activities, got myself in a lot of street trouble, which kind of ran me into my current husband now. And we got together when I was about 21, both still, I had no idea about my faith. And I think he was saved when he was younger, but not practicing his faith at all.
Yeah.
So
what was the catalyst for you coming to know the Lord?
The catalyst of it all? So my husband and I had a toxic relationship, just like the rest of them. He was the worst of them all, actually. So when we got through the thick of it, we ended up kind of having a separation. And he was dealing with a lot of childhood trauma that he never addressed, and I had no clue about. So there was just a lot of open-ended questions that I had that, weren't answered. And at this point, I was 100 pounds. I was exhausted. I was running on E, just in fight or flight, abusive relationships. I was very recluse. And I finally worked up the courage. I left and went home And he called me a couple days later. He said, I found God. And I said, you're nuts. I said, I'm not going for that. Like, it's not going to work for me. And he said, well, I'm praying for you. And I said, okay.
Wow.
You know, whatever it may be. I was on my way to file for divorce. And he called me and he said one of my horses at home, we had a farm at the time, was sick. And I drove right past the courthouse and went right home to tend to my animal. And I never left. Because when I got there, he was just different. There was something had changed. I still didn't believe the whole God thing, though. You know, I spent my childhood and my teen years worshiping rocks and, you know, summoning deities. I had no idea anything about Christianity. So we started that journey of healing, which was exhausting. It was a long process. But at the time, I was a farrier, which I worked on horse hooves and animal hooves. And I had a client in Hebron, Maryland, that I just kept kind of pushing off because there was a lot going on. And I said, okay, you know, can we run out? He had a couple pigs that needed to be trimmed, their hooves. So we went out and were greeted by the family and took care of the animals, did our normal, wrapped up, ready to go get paid. And we sat down and started chatting with them. And he said, well, you know, I'm a pastor of a church. And we got to talking a little bit about that. And for the last 2 weeks before that, I had this overwhelming urge that I wanted to get into a church. I didn't even understand what church was. But I think I was looking for the unity for my family. And maybe that was just the right thing to do. My pastor now likes to say that was Jesus wooing me.
Sure.
But
he's right.
But I didn't know that at the time. So when he said he was a pastor of the church, I got in the car with my husband and I was like, I want to go. You know, I want to go. And we went and we never left. And that was Grace Seaford Church, and Larry Davis is our pastor. But his family, there was just a glow about him that was undeniable. And I just was like, I need more of that. Whatever they got, I want some. So that's where it started. I was pregnant with twins at the time.
Wow.
So it was all real fast. And he landed there.
How has your family that you grew up with, how have they received the changes in your life?
My father and my stepmom are so supportive in everything that I do and have done, whether it was right or wrong. But they are...
That's good.
Yeah.
Because you were loved.
Yes, I was.
Despite all the chaos.
Yeah. I was the youngest girl. I was the golden child.
What is not to love?
Yeah. So they've been great. And since, you know, my childhood, two of my brothers have been delivered from addiction, and they're doing great.
Praise God.
Yeah. Two are still struggling and on the streets of Kensington. And then my mom, after 30 years of addiction, actually just got sober in November.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. So God's doing great things.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
He is always at work in our lives, even when we can't see it. But I love that you have kind of these memorial stones along the way that you can remember what God did and met you there at just the right time.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love that you said from the moment you saw your husband, you could tell something was different.
Yeah, I had to get to know him all over again. He was a stranger to me. I was like, well, you've never been glowy like that. I was like, you know, are you on drugs?
Made you a little curious, didn't it?
Yeah. So, but we started that journey together, and it has flourished since we started there, just broken and landed at Grace, and nobody knew us. Nobody knew what we had been through, and it was just so loving and overwhelming. And my husband needed a little extra work, so God sent him Frank Parks. And he went on a retreat there, and he came back even better. And just something about him just changed again. And I just, it was infatuating.
Tell me about the ministry and then your role in the newest part, which is for women.
Yes. So the ministry itself started a long time ago with Frank, and bringing the guys down to the island and just loving them where they're at. You know, and the story, his book, everything that he's done and paved the way for his foundation and for the guys is so admirable. But my husband, you know, went on a retreat there and then formed a relationship with Frank, and I was kind of in the sidelines because I had just had my girls. But, you know, we would do those late night run-ins with the guys maybe that had relapsed or, really needing to be loved where they're at. And my husband started kind of helping Frank in that aspect and building relationships with these guys. And a lot of times I was there, and I just remember seeing that and being like, where was this when all my brothers were addicted? Like, where was this guy that could have saved them then? I was like, this works. This accountability and this stability and support works. And realizing that the missing piece in addiction is Jesus, is that love and support. So when my husband always was active in that, and he ran the men's shelter for a while in Seaford, and so he was like, "We're going to do the women's shelter this year." And I said, "Okay, I'll do it, whatever." I wasn't super thrilled. It was my first time in ministry, and I had kids at home. I was overwhelmed a little bit, but I kind of hit the ground full force, and I met a girl that was homeless on the street, and I got that feeling that I think that Frank gets with his guys, this overwhelming urge to do something. And she was the hardest one that I have ever had in the shelter, and I still work with her to this day. But she changed the road for me. We ended up baptizing 4 girls out of the shelter, and the next day the house became available, and I was able to completely close the shelter in Seaford and give them all a place to live and a fresh start because of Frank and the foundation.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
So the island, by the way, when I was talking with Frank about the ministry, he told me it's called Frank's Island. And before I could say another word, because I got really quiet, he goes, "I did not name the island." But it seemed really appropriate when I saw it.
Yeah, definitely.
So the retreat center that was there burned to the ground in January.
Yes. It was so catastrophic for us because, we had done the women's retreats there. I had been on a few and really connected with the women that, were drugged behind their husbands through addiction. Like, there is not really much support for that.
Yeah. And
so meeting those people, it became a sacred place. There was so much sin left behind there. There was so much honesty and the Holy Spirit is alive still there. And when you step foot on the island, it just, something is different about you and everybody you go with. So when it burned down, it was really like we took it personal, Thankfully nobody was hurt, and but all that work and dedication, it was hard to continue to just praise for a couple of days after that, because we were just like, how, why? It had only been a year.
Yeah.
Since
Are there plans to rebuild?
There is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and it's going great. Frank has had the guys out there cleaning up. He has a small place, little building there that they utilized on their last retreat last weekend, which is their first retreat since the fire. And he's just not going to stop. We're going to rebuild and do it better. And now we get to throw women in the mix. So it's been a good time. And I think it's going to be great.
I was looking at the Facebook page a little earlier, and I saw a video of them, or pictures of them floating a bulldozer or something on a raft across to the island. I thought, boy, they're not letting anything come between them and getting this redone. No, there was a storm. Storm supposed to come in on Friday night, and all of us, without Frank here, are like, you think he's going to postpone? Like, you guys are going to be intense. And my husband just looked at me and said, there is no way he's letting the devil win this one. Like, we're going to stand there in the wind and rain if that's what we have to do, because he wasn't going to stop. Whether there was a building or not a building, they started intense before they had the retreat house. So, but it went great. There was no storm. There was a couple baptisms, and continuing to do the good work. Meantime, the work is also happening in the Seaford area where your home is for women. Where's the one for the men? In Seaford as well?
Yeah, there's 2 in Seaford as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you feel like finding a place to connect and help and serve others was a really big part of helping you to recover and move forward and leave that old life behind?
Absolutely. And I didn't get that at first. I didn't understand what serving really was until I was just in the thick of it and was so dedicated and just working with these women who are grappling with the enemy every day but are choosing to turn their face to the Lord and get baptized. And just going into the shelter and praying over them. And I threw them almost at every resource I could in the area, and nothing was sticking. And all I could do was pray, and watching the Lord just really take all of those women into a full circle. I became addicted to it. I'm just like, this is the answer. This works. And it is. There's a lot of gratification there, and there's a lot of passion behind it. So yeah, definitely.
Well, if you're going to be addicted to something, serving God and helping others is the best kind of addiction, right?
Yeah. Fishing for men is definitely, it is. It's always an event.
And we're all called to be that.
Yes.
Okay, can I go back a little bit to the beginning because you said something that I totally did not expect in your story, and that is that your mom was a practicing Wiccan. She was in the Wiccan, and all of that. How do you deal with that? How did you deal with that when you came to really know Jesus as your Savior?
Well, I spent, I thought that was the right way.
Because that's what you saw.
Yeah. And she, she was a medium, did all of that. And I always found myself looking for answers, though, growing up. Like, I always wanted to connect to something. I was always very adamant about trying to, meditate and trying to figure out the right thing to do to connect closer to whatever I thought was God. So then when I came into my faith, that they're almost parallel. That everybody, you're trying to get somewhere and harness an energy on one side of being Wiccan, and then it's the same kind of mentality when it's just Jesus. And everything started to make sense. All those answers I searched for, they were all right there, written in a book. Yes. And I was like, what?
So the enemy always has a counterfeit.
Yeah.
Including a counterfeit faith.
Absolutely.
The biggest thing about that is, and I'm hearing you say it, is that it left you empty.
Oh, yeah.
Even when you were right in the middle of it.
Absolutely. And I had no idea. That it was black magic or satanic at all. I had no idea that that's what was going on. I felt fear a lot. In doing certain things and saying certain things, and the way that you're taught to manifest things. I would feel scared, but I didn't understand why. I just thought, wow, this is so big. It's so big. I'm just intimidated by it. I had no idea that I was working for the enemy, though, at that time.
What would you tell someone listening today who is either dabbling in that or has a loved one who is?
To just entertain the thought of reading the Bible, and reading through the Gospels and seeing the other side of the light, of what you're supposed to be able to comprehend. Like, we were left this book to understand and to continue to push forward on Jesus's ministry. And it's when you're searching like that, when you're searching in the rocks and in the manifestations and worshiping deities and doing spells and things like that, there's something inside that's broken that you haven't healed yet, and you're looking for that healing. You're just looking in the wrong place. And it's so obtainable and it's so easy that I was frustrated when I found out that it was that easy all this time to just find the Lord. And I think that it's misconstruing, because it's given off that it's a good thing, It's connecting to the universe and these things, you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's scary once you get to the head of it all. When I realized what I had been doing my whole life, I was very intimidated. I was like, oh my, thankfully, I think the Lord was walking beside me through all of that confusion.
Yeah. So when the Holy Spirit rushed in, when you welcomed him, what was the first thing that you wanted to do?
So I had a hard time at first. Pastor Larry really invested his time into me, as did his wife, because I wasn't going down without a fight. I had a very science state of mind, and I just couldn't, and I didn't understand. It was like teaching a baby. I had no clue about any of it. So it took a lot of conversation to get me to that point of baptism and really giving my life over to the Lord. But it took me a little while after baptism to feel that. And the first time that I really felt it was in ministry. Was with one of the women that I work with. And I felt that overwhelming draw and just the fulfillment of God's fruition coming alive. And it just brings you to tears, where you're like, this works. I can feel him in my day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And just emotional.
And you recognize that he's bigger. He's bigger than all that you're in.
Oh, yeah. First time I felt him, though, the first thing I wanted to do was just tell all of my mentors and superior, I'm like, I made it. I'm here. I got it. I figured it out. And just to change all those little tiny pieces of your life that you're still doing, wrong, that you just haven't worked out yet. I was in a rush to get them right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aren't you so glad that Jesus is patient with us, though?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
You have 2 girls.
And a boy.
And
then
a boy.
2 stepchildren.
Okay.
So 5 altogether.
What are their ages, like,
They
from one
range
to
from
the other?
13 to 1.5.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Life is very busy for you,
Yeah, it's
isn't
fun.
it? Very
Yeah,
full.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, jumping into ministry is really, I can tell that it's a passion for you.
Yeah.
How do you fit it all together?
It takes a village. And I didn't understand that saying until I had twins, that it does take a village. And, my children are growing in their faith rapidly. My 13-year-old is beautifully growing into a little woman of God. And watching her, she is eager to serve as well. She serves in the children's ministry in our church. And she looks at that, when she watches her sisters, that she is serving the Lord. If, her dad and I have to run out and spread some love or do whatever we got to do, she's definitely willing to help. And we just all are honest and forward about our needs, with other family members, with finances and things that go on. We're just like, hey, we're struggling here. And the Lord always meets the need. He does.
Well, your kids are going to learn how to serve because they're watching you. They're
Yeah.
seeing you serve day in and day out.
Yeah.
And love Jesus as well. Tell me about the home and your events that you have. Who is it for? Is it just for people who are in addiction?
I think that is where the men's house really harnessed it all in. But with the women, us women have a tendency of our addictions lie farther than substance. There's some mental health that goes on there, and a lot of trauma. A lot of my women have been sexually abused and raped on the streets, and there's a different kind of healing process there, and other addictions that surface from that. So with the women's house, we're a little bit more diverse. We have a couple of girls that don't have a substance issue, that are just recovering in a different way, and then we have some of the girls that are recovering from substance abuse. So it's a little bit of it's a nice mix.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is this meant to be very short term, or there is some long term availability? It's not just a weekend retreat.
No.
That's what I'm asking.
No. So it's residency for them.
Okay.
And they are working the program just like the guys do, where, they pay rent. They are supported in getting a job and getting, just rebuilding their lives.
Yeah.
And it's kind of as long as they need. But the goal is for them to transition from us with the tools and the coping mechanisms and the support and the fellowship and knowledge enough of the Bible and that love and support to do it on their own.
Yeah.
And they do. Frank's brought a couple guys through graduation there that are doing great.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
If there's someone who wants to help financially or with supplies or with maybe they feel called to be part of the ministry, how do they go about doing that?
Well, right now, the island being rebuilt, I'm not sure what Frank has in store for all of us next, but now that the retreat is over since last weekend, I'm hoping that he takes a break soon. But he always has something going on down there, helping with cleanup and things like that. And you can, his wife does a great job of organizing him. So they have a website, it's fisherofmen.us, and you can find what's going on there in our Facebook pages. As far as, volunteering with the women, I try to encourage people to always, want to do a devotional with them. A lot of them sometimes need help doing paperwork and getting IDs. There is a lot of work that goes into it, but just connecting with us, figuring out what needs to happen. We're rebuilding lives. It gets messy sometimes. We have to run them here, do this, deal with court. All of that happens. Okay. So any help is greatly appreciated always. And donations through the Fisher Men Foundation online.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. What's next for you? I
like where I'm at. I am growing so quickly. And I think that wherever we go, my husband and I both say we'll just follow Frank blindly wherever he goes. It's scary sometimes, but, more women's houses and just reaching more people and rebuilding the island and just continuing to be involved there and growing. Frank, goes to our church now and he's a member there. So it's really just, it's a tight-knit and it works.
Is there a dream or a goal to expand, to take this to other locations, other states?
I'm sure, to continue to branch out. But even just meeting the need in Seaford right now is still it's still a need. There's still houses to come, I'm sure. Yeah. A lot of the men's houses, they're overflowing. Sometimes they're on the couch. So definitely growth.
Yeah.
It's happening.
Cadie, you're so young.
Yeah.
And God has done so much through your life.
Yeah.
I mean, you have been through some real storms. And I just first thank God that he rescued you and that he kept you. Even in the dark times, God was there with you. Do you ever feel like when you look back, you think, you know what? I know he was there sustaining me even when I didn't know him.
Yes. There's multiple times that I prayed prayers of desperation, to a God I didn't believe in, on a bathroom floor, beaten up by a boyfriend or just kind of been out of shape. And I was always okay. There was multiple times that I look back and I'm like, how did I get through that? How did I make it out of that alive? Yeah. Still well and cognitively functioning enough to help others. Like he can use me.
Yeah.
So I know he was there.
That's awesome.
I was just confused.
Well, you're on a good path now.
Yeah. It's going good. Much better this way. I'm doing much better.
All right. Well, we will give information on the ministry and contact information in the show notes for our podcast. We're so thankful that you made the time to sit down and tell your story.
Yeah.
Anything that you feel like, oh, I forgot to share this. Anything?
In this ministry, and it's a lot of boots on the ground and frontline work, and that's my favorite. And you just continue to do what the Bible says, like in Luke and Mark, that we carry the sick on the cots to the Lord through the roof. And that's how you feel sometimes, where it's like, if I can just get them to the Lord, I know that they'll be okay. They don't see another way out. So when you have somebody that's struggling, there's a lot of people that told me about a couple of my girls, I was wasting my time, and that they just weren't able to be fixed. But,
you didn't give up.
No. My God heals, I'm like, no, we just got to get them to the Lord. They'll be all right.
Well, I love your tenacity and your passion for the Lord. And I pray that you never lose that.
Yes.
Keep on doing what you're doing. And we can't wait to hear maybe an update in the months and years to come.
Definitely.
God bless you, Cadie.
Thank you so much.
We were never meant to journey alone. Whether you're having a great day or a hard one, we need each other to celebrate and to stand in the gap. Sharing our stories helps remind us that we're not alone. And when we sit with women who sit at the feet of Jesus, the conversations are different. We walk away feeling inspired, not inferior, because we know this Christian walk is a race, but not a competition. Thank you for listening to this episode of Over the Rims of Mugs. To share a comment, suggest a topic, or ask a question, email us podcast@wearethebridge.org. And please join me for a daily devotion on my blog entitled Treasured Inside. You can find it directly at deniseharper.blog or at wearethebridge.org/devotion. Until our next sip, I'm your host, Denise Harper, encouraging you to catch up with a friend or make a new one and enjoy some good conversation over the rims of mugs.